now happening live after floundering around as if we were touching technology for the first time. You are joining the EdTech Situation Room, coming to you live from Oklahoma City. This is Wes Fryer, Tech Director at Cassidy School, joined by the amazing
Jason Eifer. I'm joining you live tonight from Missoula, Montana. I'm the Assistant Director and Curriculum Director of the Montana Digital Academy, the state virtual school in fabulous Big Sky country. Good evening, Wes. Welcome back to stateside.
Yes, well, as we were saying before the recording was actually starting, last week I was boarding a 10-hour flight from Sao Paulo, Brazil to Dallas, and while the Wi-Fi was, reasonably good, they had blocked all the streaming services, and so it was good that we didn't connect. But where have your travels taken you in the last 3 weeks?
I've been to a number of meetings related to work. Probably the biggest one was I went to, I'm the chair of the Curriculum Directors Committee of the State Virtual School Leadership Alliance, which is a group of about a dozen or so state virtual schools that work together on curriculum and advocacy and instructional models. And then I also had a really unique opportunity last week to attend a Native Language Summit in Poplar, Montana, where representatives of the many tribal nations around the state of Montana were talking about the prospects of using digital learning to help preserve language in their various communities. So very interesting discussion. It's an issue I'm actually quite passionate about. I had a good friend in college that did a lot of research on indigenous languages and the slow death of indigenous languages over the last century in the United States. And so it's something I'm glad that I can at least be part of the discussion. So
we'll have to connect with Nancy, and we're talking about a Storychaser Workshop, this summer. I don't know if you've been looped in on that at all, but I'll have to loop you in, because, that digital storytelling and doing what we're thinking about, more family, community, history. Yep. It could be anything. It can be your tribe, your church, whatever group. How cool. And there's like 7 federally recognized tribes in Montana. Is that right?
Yes, and we all but one are have reservations, and there's a landless tribe in the Great Falls area. So it's kind of they've been looking for recognition for like over 20 years in Montana. It's the Little Shell Nation. So it's an interesting part, and Montana has been very proactive in the last 20 years to putting Indian education at the forefront of our discussion. We have a state law called Indian Education for Law that tries to fund and push forward the constitutionally mandated education of both Native American students and then tribal culture and history throughout our state. So it's been a very big part of my own work as a teacher since I've been in a classroom since the late 90s, and certainly it's something that we plan around and discuss and develop around as part of my job at the Digital Academy.
That is awesome. Well, we'll have to chat some more about that. We've got 36 federally recognized tribes here in Oklahoma, and I think there's over 40 actually. And anyway, that's kind of a neat connection we have. Well, If you are joining us for the first time, welcome. If you're coming back for more excitement, bless you. But our goal here for the EdTech Situation Room is mainly to take a look at some news from the past week, or in this case, we could draw from the last 3 weeks, and talk about the application for education, not just, how this applies to the whole world, but how does this apply to K-12 schools and virtual schools, colleges, and all that kind of stuff. So, Jason, I'm going to kick us off with probably what everyone would anticipate, but the Apple announcements. I did download on my Apple TV the new Events app, and last night, finished watching the whole keynote, so I didn't just, get my news through the blogs, although I definitely did a bit of that. But any responses that you have to the announcements, which I guess some people would kind of say are a little underwhelming. But any thoughts on any of those announcements, and especially as they might apply to schools? I think 9.3 is probably a pretty big deal.
Sure. Well, let's start with maybe just the hardware, because I guess I would echo the notion that it was a pretty boring hardware announcement. Announcing 2 new sizes of existing products is not a real exciting prospect.
New bands.
Yeah, I know. And so I guess maybe to talk about them separately for a moment, there is a smaller iPhone, which I was surprised to hear that Apple in the last year sold 30 million of what I guess what I would assume would be iPhone 4 and 4Ss that are new, or maybe they were 5 or 5Ss, but whatever it was the smaller form factor as new phones. And so it is, I think, smart for them to go into that market. Although a lot of the Apple and iPhone blogs in the last 24 hours have pointed out that they don't expect many of those phones to be sold in the United States, and it's be mostly an international product. That said, I know a lot of folks that were pretty disappointed when the iPhone 6 was released because its size was something that they weren't really interested in. My wife, for example, kind of decided that the size wasn't for her, although she ended up buying a 6S this year on contract and has been very happy with it. So, but I think that's a smart move on their part.
I think it's a good idea to probably take these in turn because there's so many different things. So I just dropped a link into the chat. The iPhone just got its first real price cut from Business Insider on Monday. One of our general narratives here has been talking Google, Apple, Amazon, that kind of stuff. And, we've said it before, it's wonderful as an educator to not have to just pick one side and to be able to use tools from different ecosystems. But, this article is talking about the international sales, talking about India, and talking about how, Apple is going to have opportunities to be able to really sell at a lower price point. And, this is important. I mean, the digital divide, I was just talking to my wife tonight, her kids that are all homeless, they do not have, if they have internet connectivity, it is through a smartphone that their parent has, but they don't have they have iPads at school. They don't have them at home. They don't have high-speed internet, basically. The digital divide is real, and it's here in the States, and, it's abroad as well. When I was in Brazil, the school where I was, established in the 30s, very affluent international school, but right across the street and down the hill is a favela, one of the, I think it's the second largest in Brazil with 80,000 folks living in it. It's a shanty town built, mainly of bricks, kind of a dangerous place, not a lot of, I think, provided, services. So I think this announcement is not just good for people who, want a smaller phone. Oh, isn't that nice to have a smaller form factor? But when we talk about price and when we talk about the ways in which more folks can gain access to really powerful computers that they have in their hands and the opportunities. Of course, it's fraught with danger and us staying on them all the time and not, talking to each other on date night. But I think that monetary side is brought out in that Business Insider article real well, and that's significant.
And then also to note that while they did make a compromise on the screen size, there's nothing else compromised about the phone. The innards are basically a duplicate of the 6, I think it's the 6S, the smaller size 6S, and that's impressive because that's both of those phones, the 6S and the 6S Plus, are incredibly powerful phones, which I think is definitely a boon to Apple to squeeze that hardware into a smaller form factor. That said, it goes back to the age-old debate at Apple, right? Steve Jobs always said that, we're not in the business of, customizing to every one of your needs. We will design the perfect product for you, and you will accept it because it's the perfect product. And it's definitely a different Apple. The fact that we now have 3 sizes of iPhones. Now that we have, 4 iPads, we have 2 iPad, or an iPad, an iPad mini, and then an iPad Pro, and an iPad sort of smaller Pro, like those, that's definitely a shift in philosophy from Apple. And so I hope it bodes well for them. I will note that there was another interesting article, and I'll try to put this back in the show notes when I'm done. Walt Mossberg wrote in Recode today, Walt Mossberg being a longtime, very big Apple fan, that he feels like that the announcement was boring today, and that last year's announcements were not super great, that there was not a lot of advancement in the phone in the fall announcement last year, so the 6S and the 6S Plus. And he thinks that if Apple's going to stay competitive and dominant in this market, the iPhone 7 coming out presumably this fall needs to be a super winner and really an evolutionary phone. But frankly, I find that to be kind of a tall order. mean, at this point, and I'm an Android phone user, to be clear. I'm not, I have an iPad, and I like my iPad a lot, but, I'm currently using a Nexus 6 phone, and I like this. It's a great phone for me, but I don't know what's left to wow anyone. In fact, I thought, if anything, the 6S and 6S Plus this past fall, with the feedback on the phone and the fact that you can press and do different things with the interface, was, I thought, the most amazing advancement in any phone last year. So at this point, I think they may be out of the wow that happened in the first 4 or 5 generations of smartphones. At this point, making battery life better, and making these phones faster so they could run more complex software products. I don't know what more you can do at this point year after year.
Well, and to bring it back to schools and the classroom, I think one of the impacts of this is it's the normalization of the wow power of the smartphone. The more that becomes the standard of, my phone can do that. And I'm definitely still an iPhone fanboy, and I sat next to somebody on a flight a few years ago that almost got me to go Android, and then my kids almost revolted when they thought, oh my gosh, Dad won't have that new one, for us to inherit. So I succumbed to the peer pressure of my children. But the normalization of the power that we have in the phone, and the ability that we have to be able to shoot video, to be able to publish it, to be able to have that kind of a device. I mean, remember when digital cameras were rare in school, and maybe it was the football team or sports, coaches that are gonna have them, and you're gonna have to check it out, and then you're gonna have to import it. And I mean, that has so radically changed in the last decade. It's really amazing. So I don't know. That's where I think, again, getting back to the price. But I will say this: the thing I'm interested in 9.3. I'm interested in how that is going to solve, or at least provide a way to solve the question, how do I turn this in to my teacher? I'm not as interested in Nearpod type, I'm going to broadcast and all you guys are going to see my screen. And, the last 2 years I had a cart of 20 iPads in my classroom, and so got to play around with a lot of different things. And I don't think the best use of educational technology is to say, okay, class, let's all be on this page, and I'm going to use my technology tools to try to force your attention. You can do that to a degree, but one of the things I'm most excited about is Apple TV. I posted a little video last night just kind of showing folder organization, but streaming wirelessly to the Apple TV. And I won't, totally go to my Geek of the Week, but I went ahead and put in this because I learned this in Brazil. AirParrot has an extension for Chrome that lets you stream to an Apple TV. And in the case of the graded school where we were, they bought 50 licenses. They used device management on the Chromebook, so they can have up to 50 of their students or teachers on Chrome, simultaneously streaming to their Apple TVs. I mean, that is a very exciting thing, to not be tethered to the front of the room, to have different students who can share their screen. And so I am personally thankful that Apple is continuing to invest in Apple TV.
Yeah.
Jobs called it the hobbyist or the hobby thing, or it wasn't that serious. But we went ahead and jumped at home to invest in it, and then in school, I think I just set up my 6th one today. We have a flat screen TV in each of our libraries, and our middle division art teacher, who for some reason just had never gotten projection in her room, talked to her, and she's got, didn't really want to do the smart board. How about a TV? So $420 Insignia at Best Buy, TV that's mounted in there, Apple TV. So the whole thing's about $700 with Apple TV and the mount, the $20 mount from Amazon. So that's, that was one of the things that I was most excited about, was to see the continuing development of Apple TV. It's incremental. Now with Siri, you can, I guess, search for more things in more places, but from an educational standpoint, it's not about the apps. It's about getting my screen, up there and not having to plug in, and being able to have I don't know what you call that, but the multi-screen classroom. And you just went dark, Jason. So I don't know if you just your power just went out, or you had a little camera.
Can you?
I'm hearing you.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you and Still for a while, so whenever it's a connection issue. So
local.
Yeah,
my kids probably started to stream.
So well, and I have to say that that's you've been at the University of Montana, where my offices are located in Missoula, and that's the philosophy of the design of that building, which was opened in 2011, is that there are a lot of screens all around the building, and the idea is that students can come and create groups around and project and cast to televisions. The bigger screen allows for good, interesting collaboration, and to utilize, which is starting to become more rare. A lot of people don't have desktops and large monitors anymore, although you can pry my large monitors from my cold dead hands. That's a great way to create a great interactive, especially small group classroom without a lot of expense. And I listened to you talking about a $700 setup with a 42-inch television and an Apple TV.
55.
Yeah. Oh wow. That's even more awesome. But you remember the days, which were not that far past, where it cost $1,000 to buy a decent projector, or $1,500, and now the televisions have largely replaced that expense. You can create a beautifully large television for a fraction of the cost of those projection units. It's a great way, I think, to add a great media presence in a classroom.
And, I've been struck by this for a number of years. When I moved to Oklahoma in 2006, I could video conference better from my house over my cable modem, which at the time was like 10 or 12 down. Now it's 10 times that fast, but than I could at our offices, because AT&T was still on the T1s and all the channels, and just basically doing it the old way, not doing it over TV. The best screen in the house is generally the TV, and I feel like we still have a challenge in school to say, how do we make the media environment, how do we enable ourselves to bring in rich media content? Like Planet Earth a few years ago, when our family saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, how can we have a better, more immersive media experience, about learning of the wonders of our natural world? And here we are doing this at our house. I think in school, we're starting to rethink projection and not just smartboard for everybody's room.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, some people with the Surface Touch. Somebody was telling me tonight, I guess smartboard has a new multi-touch, single screen. I don't think that is where we want to go, where it's this single screen that we've invested in. I truly think it's students having devices, whether it is a Chromebook or an iPad, being able to learn with it, and then being able to have a way of sharing it, not only synchronously in the room, but also being able to publish and share, other places.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, I could agree more. So a couple other products. There's a new iPad Pro, a smaller version, I guess it's a 9.7-inch version of an iPad Pro, and I didn't pay as close attention to that, but I'm assuming that has the pen and the advanced touch features and the Wi-Com capability built into it, which I have no personal use for, but I'm assuming there's a market out there for that. Any thoughts about that product?
My wife is still on her iPad too, so we were going to refresh her to the Air 1 without Touch ID. But taking a look at that, they did drop the price of the Air 2, I think. So again, it's like yesterday's technology, which was unbelievable. Now it's $100 less. So we're gonna debate that. My daughter's cheering because my desk. I actually completed the FAFSA form and got our taxes all together yesterday. So my family's in shock that my desk is not covered with junk. Sorry. It's like our phone system at school. We're still on an analog phone system. We haven't gone VoIP, and we might not be able to do that this summer. It's probably going to be another year. We're going to go from 1980s phone to 2016 in one big jump when that happens. And with the iPad, going from iPad 2 to, if she goes to Pro, I don't know what that is, but it's like you're jumping multiple generations. So it's not like, and let's face it, most people aren't. I mean, a lot of the tech people we probably listen to on podcasts and things are getting each device, and so they're having these incremental bumps. But when you're going from iPad 2 to iPad Pro, it's definitely going to be faster. But the whole creation side and what that's going to look like. And also, I mean, there's some things, dash and dots and other kinds of STEM stuff that my wife has, which are incompatible with her older one. So
right,
it's that'll be exciting, and it'll be kind of fun to see her do that. And it also just makes you realize what exponential change is. I mean, we are continuing. I mean, people said Moore's law is going to be over and whatever. No, not yet. And Google's working on the quantum computer, and everything just seems to continue to keep going faster and faster. So I guess I'm glad to see Apple continuing to iterate and figure out how they're going to try to have the next big thing. I don't think they've done it with the Apple Watch. This is not an Apple Watch. This is my $15 Casio, whatever this is. Yeah, but I think that it's with the ecosystems being as they are, and I'm just so happy that things working, having technology that seems to just work is becoming much more normal at school as we have moved away from what was the old Microsoft. And, we have Chromebooks and we have, iOS devices. And so anyway, that the new normal to me in school means a lot fewer clicks, a lot easier and more reliable tech.
Right.
As long as your network is set up for it. So
yep, absolutely.
We kind of went a long way on that one. Maybe we'll go a little bit further off the top of the hour since we were delayed. If you do have questions, I don't think I'll be able to see the chat because I'm on my iPad, but Jason probably can. And we also could have somebody call in. So amazingly, there are 7 people. I think that counts us too, though, right? I think we have 5 people. Yeah, so there's five folks that are out there. So if you'd like to toss us a question, you can tweet with the hashtag EdTechSR, and I'll follow that. And then Jason could probably see the questions that'll be coming up in the actual room. And if you want to dial in, you can click, call in and you can join. So do you have any thoughts about 9.3? Do you know anybody who played with that as far as the new Mac, I should say iOS 9.3 classroom?
I've read quite a bit about it, but I don't know anyone that's jumped in yet. I'm likely to be working this fall in context of my dissertation research in a building that is pretty close to one-to-one iPads, and so I am looking forward to see what the teachers in that building do with those particular features. But I will say I'm glad they have finally gone in this direction. I think they've needed something here for a long time. I really sincerely hope it's not too little too late in regards to, there's a lot of schools that bought into iPads early, found the management issues were too large, and then went into another direction. I'm still a big fan personally. I think that the perfect classroom is a multi-device classroom, that, it's everything and all the above. But I hope that this allows those that do have a lot of iPads to find some easy management for those devices.
And that's probably the number one takeaway from this is we live in a multi-device world. We've probably said it before on the show. You and I are going to feel handicapped if somebody comes in and tells us you can only use, one device. We're using multiple devices. We live in a world that's full of open sharing, and we want to encourage more people to share. That means you don't want to put all your content just into iTunes U. If you're going to publish in iTunes U, that's okay. But there are lots of other devices that parents and students have. Everyone is not going to have an iOS device. And so publishing your content openly using, Google tools and others, things to be at wikis and places to share is really important. So yeah, it's exciting to see the new announcements. It's good to see Apple hopefully being a little more accommodating towards education. But let's be frank, they're going to continue to look at the consumer market and, where that market share is, which is out beyond school to,
right.
Have their focus. But, the tools continue to mature. And frankly, Seesaw is the most exciting app that I've seen, period, on iOS or any platform for students being able to turn stuff in and share. My wife is using it as a bridge now for her kids to turn videos into her that she can then retweet out. So she's doing some passion projects. She had a kid today. He's going to do a vlog every day about his origami. And so he took his own video on his iPad, flipped it into Seesaw. My wife on her phone has it. She downloads it to her photo roll, sends it out, via Twitter. I mean, that's awesome. So
Yep.
maybe Apple Classroom is going to move in that direction, but there are between Google Classroom, Seesaw, and then other kinds of learning management systems that people have. There are some robust tools that are getting even better that help us do that. All right,
Yep.
we can't talk about Apple's announcements all the time. So even if it's 5 people, so. You want to toss out another article or topic?
Yeah, I was interested in an article that I saw early this morning reading the morning news. There's a new app that Recode covered today called Blendle. And Blendle, which is an awful name, but Blendle is attempting to do something that is a kind of an answer to what do we do now that we're disrupted. And I'm speaking, of course, of the news industry. But Blendle attempts to do something that I thought would have been a great idea, 10 or 15 years ago. I feel they're a little late in this, but Blendle essentially offers you access to premier publisher content. We're talking about, the big kids, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Time Inc., Washington Post, amongst other major publishers. And their shtick here is that they're offering the concept of micropayments. So you see an article that you want to read, you pay, cents somewhere between 19 and 39 to get access to parts of an issue or individual stories. And so the reason why I wanted to talk about this tonight was a couple-fold. First, I mean, it is, if you want to talk about a disrupted industry, you'd have a hard time finding one that's been more upended than journalism and the kind of journalism industrial complex that has followed pretty aggressively away in the past 20 years. But, here we are now, and I would say I feel like that at least I've come to some equilibrium with news, in that I still do access a lot of news, but I do now subscribe to 2 or 3 major publications, New York Times being one of them, and I kind of focus my efforts there, even though there's a lot of free news available, because I want to fund journalism. Like, I want to pay something into that pot. But I think that there's something here to schools, in that I think you're going to start to see probably late evolutions. Like, I don't think these are things that are going to be on time to save their industries, but I think this is probably going to be the direction of things like textbooks. I think textbooks are still, very much failed to evolve with the times. But you're going to start to see creative attempts to take publisher content and break it up into smaller parts and attempt to still monetize it that particular way. So, Wes, would you be a Blendle customer?
Oh gosh, my bar for paying for it's really interesting what your threshold is when you're ready to pay with micropayments. I'll admit that I have not used Patron. I think it's Patron. Isn't that how you can donate to podcasters and stuff? Is it called?
Oh, Patreon?
Patreon, thank you.
Yep.
I'm trying to speak Spanish. Patreon, and that could be something to dabble with. I don't know. I don't know if there's enough there for people, if that's just sort of coffee money that you're going to have, or if it's going to be serious money. I mean, I'm unwilling at this point the Daily Oklahoman, which is, we have the Tulsa World and the Daily Oklahoman are our 2 biggest papers in the state. And the Daily Oklahoman publishes a fair bit openly. The governor, this will be the first time I've publicly talked about this, and I'll try to be careful as I dance around this delicate issue. We had a big voucher push by conservative legislators in our state. Our governor, who's a Republican, came to my wife's classroom 2 weeks ago, and the photograph of them, was on page 3 of the Daily Oklahoman. Interestingly, that was not published openly. I would have to be a subscriber and pay for access to that, or somebody who is a subscriber sent me a link, and I was able to click on that link. But and I won't. There's going to be. There's a whole lot to say around that whole thing. I'm not gonna go into it now, but I'll just say that the page that I'm on and my wife is on politically was a very different page than the one that was being advanced by all these photographs. I don't pay for that, and I don't want to pay for that local news. The irony is, if we don't pay for that, like, we're gonna lose it. you know, because it takes money to have somebody be down at the courthouse or follow the local politicians. And I read it, and I don't have the article link to put it in, but the piece that I read was basically saying, if you look at everything that was like a whistleblower or, you know, investigative journalism, Pentagon Papers, like there was somebody covering a local beat, and then nationally people got involved. I mean, there were journalists who were being paid to do what they were doing, you know, and then it became this example of what's that called, the fourth estate, when we talk about journalism. This is really important stuff, right? We really, having a relatively, our press is absolutely not totally free, no press is, but compared to, let's say, you know, Turkey, you know, we have a really robust journalism, you know, fourth estate. So I don't know. I'm not sure how this gets navigated, because kind of like with apps, when you see an app, it's like $5. You're like, $5? Are you kidding me? But then people will go buy a console game, or, you know, you'll go rent a movie. I mean, it's Redbox now and it's cheaper, but I don't know. I don't think I'm at the point for embracing the micropayments. I probably should, but I don't know what's going to move my headspace. What it does make me think of, thinking about the classroom again, is, you know, I've got to update Playing with Media. That was a 2011 publication. Preposterous has been dead for years. And one thing that's fun about publishing yourself and not being beholden to, you know, Hachette or whoever is the publisher, is thinking about doing creative and iterative things. You know, it'd be really fun to publish that in some kind of a creative way where it was a little bit more micropayments that people were going to have, but then there was something more collaborative with it. You know, it could really advance this idea of what is a textbook. You know, how could we crowdsource things and learn together, and, you know, how could artifacts be submitted? Or I don't remember the name. There was an iPad app that got bought by Accelerated Reader. Maybe we even talked about this in one of the sessions. And I used it in some of the mapping media things that I did when I was video conferencing with Montana. And anyway, it's a dead app now, and I can't go to it because on my iPad. But it was so interactive, and you could highlight stuff, you could see what students have read, you could have comments, all of that kind of stuff. So, you know, I don't know. I think the journalism industry is one of these cases that, you know, people look at and say, we don't want to be like that. You know, we don't want to be like that. And so, I don't know. I rambled a long time, and I'm not sure what I really said.
Well, and I will say at least in the context of Montana's a good example of this. We've had mass consolidation of newspapers in Montana down to a couple of larger corporate interests. Newsrooms have been slashed across the state, and I think the quality of journalism has gone down. That doesn't mean I don't know. In fact, I know 4 or 5 journalists in Montana, and they're smart and hardworking people. But there's just not enough time in the day to do, you know, the reporting that needs to be done. And so I'm concerned. And at the same time, it's, you know, we have a lot of industries. Media is a good example of this, that are you know, facing the wrath of the open internet. And they're still scrambling for models. Although related to that, there was a note out overnight that I've not had a chance to dig into yet, but apparently last year was the greatest year on record for the recording industry since 2011. So they've started an uptick again, almost like they're figuring out.
Measured how? As far as amounts of money or numbers of
I'm assuming sales, so probably profits, although now I kind of want to look to see specifically, but that doesn't mean that the RIAA is not still claiming that, you know, that they're still very cash poor in that industry, and compared to what they used to be, they very much are. But you know, I do think that there's you know, there's something to be said about, we're still, you know, blindly feeling our way through this. Industries are being upturned, and not the least of which, you know, our industry is being challenged aggressively by these technologies. And so it's worth, I think, you know, looking at these conversations, talking about how they impact us both as consumers, as professional educators, and then responding appropriately.
Absolutely. Is it okay if I take us to the FBI and the Apple case with the?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so I'm dropping this link in right now. If you, by the way, would like to access our links, you can go to edtechsr.com, and then click links, and that's where we're putting our links. So this is an article from Engadget on Monday. FBI backs off Apple, finds another way into the iPhone 5C. So Tim Cook talked about this at the beginning of the Apple event on Monday, how weird and ironic it is that Apple, this corporation, is suddenly in the role of defending the Bill of Rights and the Constitution and, having to argue for, number one, code as speech, and number two, for encryption, and why we need encryption, and we shouldn't just have backdoors into everything, because if you do, then guess what? It's not just the FBI that's going to get in, it's going to be a lot of other people. So I think that the implications for schools of this are, number one, we have got to help people understand some of this tech magic. It's not magic, it's technology, it's coding. So the whole hour of code, the STEM thing, that's when it was very, very wonderful to go to Brazil for these 2 days and do a 2-day STEM Institute, and to realize that, international schools, similar to independent private schools, like the one where I'm the tech director now, very traditional, very focused on preparing kids with that traditional curriculum to go to selective schools. But they're also exploring all kinds of things as well. And so I think that the bandwagon of STEM, the bandwagon of coding, and also just science literacy, right? We need people to be savvy about this stuff. I finally finished listening to this book, The Pentagon's Brain by Annie Jacobson, last night. And she has a quote near the end, because we hear about the survival of the fittest. She says it's not the fittest who will survive and thrive, it's the smart. It's the folks that are into tech and being able to have agency over devices and not just be consumers. So I think there's multi-facets to this whole story, and also be aware of what you post, right? Essentially, if you tick off the wrong people, and I need to drop this article. In fact, this was from the podcast you recommended, the first episode, which is
Note to Self.
Note to Self. I'm pretty sure, didn't they talk about the case where the guy he hired hackers to say, what can you find out about me?
Yep.
Oh my gosh. And it was so scary the way they were able to get into his device. And essentially, they could have ruined his life. We're talking draining his bank accounts, ruining his credit, ruining his public persona, and just like,
yeah.
There's stuff in this digital world where, we hear about these things with the haters, and with people who, a female who will speak out about coding or gaming or something, and then suddenly becomes the target of just this vitriolic hatred. I don't know. I think digital citizenship is super important. It's a moving target. Things are happening fast, and I don't know. Those are a few of the implications. What do you think? I bet you side with the FBI, Jason, and you are all for backdoors. Isn't that your position? Actually,
I was going to accuse you of being the hacker that got into the phone. So that was going to be my strategy tonight. So, yeah, I'm a strong believer in encryption. I think the FBI is wrong. And the most persuasive argument for me is that, if Apple has a backdoor key, that's not going to stay in the government's hands for very long, and that anyone has a key. And I think that's a real problem. I'm under no pretenses that I'm perfect in securing my data or information, but I think I'm pretty good, and it's not like it used to be. You can't put your stuff in a safety deposit box and expect that to be secure. You have to be more proactive and almost regularly manage that. As part of the process. And your cynicism has to be both for prying eyes that you're not doing business with, but also prying eyes that you are doing business with. In fact, I just thought what my Geek of the Week is going to be. I've been given a presentation a couple times in the last month at conferences and Google festivals on Google's privacy settings. There's an amazing set of privacy settings that Google offers to you. And of course, a lot of people are shocked. If you have a personal Google account and go to history.google.com, it's going to show you pretty much everything it has on you. And all the cards are on the table. And I like to shock people a little bit with two pieces of data. First, the location history, which Google keeps on you, which is pretty spectacular. And then I'm an Android user, so I use Google Now a lot, which is the Siri alternative on the Android platform. And every time I ask Google Now something like navigate to Costco or tell me what the weather is in Seattle or is it going to rain next week, it not only keeps those searches in my archive, it actually keeps the audio clip of doing that, because that's not processed on your phone, that's processed on a remote server. And I bring mine up always as an example of this: better to embarrass me than embarrass someone from the audience. And the funny one last time was that it was like 5:30 in the morning, and I was trying to figure out what the weather was and where I was traveling to give this presentation, and I was yawning during the thing. I was like, oh, what's the weather gonna be? And you know, like that's creepy. But Google tells me that information. Like, it's got everything on me, but you know, no other company is, you know, setting up, you know, slick interfaces for it to see what data it has it's collected on me. So, you know, I think that's it's an important part of this debate and discussion that does not get talked about enough. And I think we need to be directing these lessons into classrooms. Like, when we talk about you know, the lack of digital citizenship training, I think we tend to focus on things related to bullying and you know stranger danger and that sort of thing, but
texting.
We don't. Yeah, texting and the things you can do with that are sometimes less than savory. And as it turns out, you know, a lot of kids don't know what's being collected on them to deliver advertising. I'm comfortable with that relationship because I generally know where that data is going. I know it funds a lot of free stuff that I probably otherwise wouldn't pay for, that I value, but I'm not sure if the typical user does. And I think that's an important part of the discussion that's getting missed.
Well, the whole idea about Google and everything they're collecting and the intelligent ways they're being able to inform you about, hey, better leave now for the airport because, you know, there's traffic. I dumped a bunch of links in, which are kind of all around. Well, the catalyst was the AI, you know, what was it called? Plago. It was the sadness and beauty of watching Google's AI Plago. So if you're not familiar with this was an article from Wired on March 11th. We've had computers in the past that have been able to beat grandmaster chess champions. Mm-hmm. But until this month, we haven't had them defeat Go champions. And Go, which I actually was introduced to when I was at the Air Force Academy as a freshman, one of the guys on our debate team loved it and played it a little bit. It reminded me of Pente, but, you know, very simple game with two different colored stones and a grid, and then you know, I think you're trying to put so many in a row, or you can capture other people, but it's really complicated. This is absolutely fascinating because one of the things that's been predicted, which people are still, you know, very much in different camps about, is the singularity. This idea that, you know, at some point we're going to have artificial intelligence and computers that are going to exceed human capacity. Let me tell you, if you want to get freaked out about this, read The Pentagon's Brain, An Uncensored History of DARPA, America's top secret military research agency, because Annie Jacobson just wrote about the declassified stuff. However, there's unclassified, I mean, she wrote, the stuff that's in the public domain now that's unclassified, it's crazy. And we're not just talking about Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger stuff. On my trip down to Brazil, I watched the movie Transcendence with Johnny. No, I guess I watched that at home. There's another AI movie that I didn't see. I watched that at home on Apple, on whatever. What did we watch? What's the other video that we have besides Netflix that we have from Trudy and Max? Plex. Do you use Plex, Jason?
I do.
Okay, because this is wild. So our cousins in Kansas City, they're on Google Fiber, have like 400 movies, and they share their Plex library, you know, to Apple TV. So Transcendence is an AI, you know, science fiction. But science fiction, the line between it is very small. So, you know, are we at where is DARPA? If DARPA is 10 to 20 years ahead of where we are as consumers, where are they right now with artificial intelligence? And I'm rambling too long about this, but Eisenhower warned us against the military-industrial complex when he stepped down in '53 or whatever before, when his last State of the Union address. At the time Eisenhower was the president of the United States, the #1 advisory group to the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the president and the Pentagon were a group of scientists actually called the Jason scientists. So see, Jason, you were well named because that was it. A lot of those guys came out of Project or Operation Paperclip, which is how we brought all these Nazi, scientists, von Neumann and these guys who not only helped us with our space program, but with the Manhattan Project and nukes. Okay, so those guys were some military, but they were basically scientists, and they worked in universities. Those were the ones giving the advice. Guess who the #1 advisory group to the Pentagon and the president is now that is the equivalent to the Jasons? It's called, I think, the Science Research Board. And guess who they're comprised of? They are all members of the military-industrial complex, the chair of General Dynamics, the chair of, Lockheed and these different companies. In the public record, what they are recommending is the Pentagon aggressively embracing autonomous weapons, which means robots that have the authority to kill. So I show them a picture of Jason and I say, here, drone, go kill him. And it goes and does this. And what they have in these public reports are, commanders and war fighters, the guys and gals flying the drones, are not comfortable with this. We need to essentially use spin and narrative to help them overcome their discomfort, trusting the machines. And, it's not just drones, it's human implants. It's being able to do, human machine hybrids. It is crazy. And so I'm pretty interested in all this. And here's my #1 takeaway. I want to do more with the ethics of STEM, not just let's build a catapult, let's learn to code. I want to talk about this. Like the last year I was teaching STEM, the United Nations in Geneva, Switzerland, had a whole conference on killer robots. And it was about, should we allow autonomous weapon systems to exist? We have really smart people like Bill Gates, like Elon Musk, like Stephen Hawking, who say this could be, humankind's final mistake. And it's, very apocalyptic. But I mean, these are smart people that are, seriously saying that this is not the right way to go. So my last takeaway about all this is we not only need smart folks, and we need to be encouraging a focus on STEM and on coding and, being geeky and learning about this stuff and making things. We've got to talk about whether it's right or it's wrong. And, Oppenheimer changed his tune when it came to nuclear weapons and thermonuclear weapons. I don't think I fully was comprehending the difference between a hydrogen weapon and an atomic weapon until I read or listened to the first chapter of Jacobson's book. So there's a whole lot in that. But I think there's definite ties to digital citizenship and ethics. And I don't think I'm going to be doing this next semester. But this book made me think about it. My school, I've taught junior high stuff and elementary, and I've taught graduate and undergraduate. But like maybe a high school class, and it could be the ethics of, the ethics of STEM, or thinking of wrestling with some of these issues, because these are things that policymakers are probably ill-equipped to discuss. And as a public, this stuff is happening now, but we're not having the kind of dialogue. I mean, we're just, our headspace is not where it needs to be. And I don't know if it can be where it needs to be, but some of it, I mean, to the degree that we can, we need to be better informed about it. And we need to encourage people to think about right and wrong. And there, goes to the privacy issues about what do you want Google to track about you, and, how comfortable are you being the product? But it also comes down to these big policy things about, do we want our military? Do we want and maybe it's out of our control. Maybe there's no way that we can stop it. But I'm telling you, that few books have provoked me in the way that this one did. And I'm still trying to process what it all means. But I think it has implications for the ways in which we talk about STEM and we talk about, values and character development and ethics. So that's a long rant.
Well, and I would say that it's going to happen faster than any of us will assume. So when you talk about as technology is starting to, put its fingers even more deeply in the way we interact with one another, the way we transport ourselves. That's all going to be. Hold on one sec. A random YouTube video just started behind my ears, and I was like, "Where's all that noise coming from?" It's going to happen way faster than we assume, and as technology starts to put its tentacles deeper into our lives, the instance I'm thinking of is the last year when the autonomous, or when the I think it was a Jeep Cherokee, whatever it was, that they did a proof of concept. Yeah, they got hacked and they were able to take it off the road, and they'd made some. They made some economic decisions to put the entertainment system and the car systems on the same bus, which was, a bad mistake, because one system was really easy to get into, the other one wasn't. But I think those are all implications here, is that we all want to be very cognizant that as technology inserts itself more into our lives, you think about the Internet of Things in our homes, that sensors and switches and things that will.
Of your house.
Yeah, exactly. You're essentially opening your door to what I guess we hope are human hackers, and not a cognizant computer. But it's definitely mind blowing and coming to a home near you. So
what is your take on AI? Do you, in the singularity, do you have an opinion as far as whether that,
I think it's possible. I mean, I think you get to a point where, we're encouraging computers to make autonomous decisions. You think about now that most commercial air flight is 90% computer controlled, and it's because they trust the computer more than they do the humans in those scenarios. I think that model is going to start to become more and more a part of how we engage in everything. Driverless cars are an example of that. I think there's certainly some applications to education, as we start to automate processes inside schools. There's a danger in all of it. And I certainly like your approach, Wes, that where we need to start having these conversations is both in context of schools, but it's not a counterpoint to STEM, because I don't think that's fair. It's definitely it's definitely a side of it that we have to be considering.
Yeah, and transhumanism. There was a conference in Austin for transhuman, and it's folks like, you've got body piercing, but now you actually have folks that are putting circuit boards, of some kind or other, in their body, and thinking about what they're going to maybe do that for artistic senses, but we have prosthetics, but it's wild, man. The days of the cyborg are here,
Yep.
Well, we probably ought to do some Geeks of the Week and wrap it up. But if anybody wants to throw a question our way, incredibly, there are 8 just, out of their mind people that are still watching us ramble on here. So if any of you want to send us a question, there's still time to tweet it with the hashtag EdTechSR. You want to go first with your Geek of the Week? You kind of previewed it already, but.
I totally forgot what it was, so maybe you should go first.
And then you can come up with your idea. This is impromptu at its best. All right. So mine, 2 things. One is AirParrot for Chrome that I already mentioned. That is an extension which you can buy individually for yourself, or you can license for your Google Apps for Education domain, and then allow users that you're using device management for Chromebooks to be able to stream to an Apple TV or a device running Air Server or Reflector. So that's very cool. And then the other one, I will admit I have not used yet, but I just learned about it today. We've got a nice nonprofit in Edmond called the Div that is focused on coding and having coding, camps and workshops for kids. And we're doing here in about 3 weeks a workshop. And the director of that told me about Kiwi for Gmail. And so this is marketed as Gmail reborn as a desktop client. It is not free, but we did talk, I think, last time about email, or unless I'm having a flashback to something else. Email is now this common denominator that's accepted. We don't have anybody at our school who doesn't do email in the corporate world, the business world, and I'm interested in how folks are going to continue to try to kind of move that needle forward a little bit. Google has their inbox app that I've played with a little bit. That's got a lot of swipes and ways to process things a little bit faster. But anyway, I had not heard of this before. Kiwi for Gmail. That's the website, kiwiforgmail.com. And I'm going to check it out and give it a try. But it looked like a new, a continuing iteration of how do we, make email better. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I'll have to play with it and see. Great.
Thanks, Wes. And then this week I'd like to share something that I may have mentioned before, but it keeps getting better and better each week. And it's somewhat reinvented a computer experience I'm having. There's a really great product available now that's called Neverwhere Cloud Ready. And Neverwhere Cloud Ready is essentially a downloadable, installable version of Chrome OS. So you can take a dated computer, and I've seen it work functionally on computers that are 8 or 9 years old, and you could effectively roll your own Chromebook with an OS that is basically the same. There's been a lot of attempts. The one I keep thinking of is Cub Linux, which used to be called Chromiex, that created a Chromebook-like experience. It was essentially Linux. This is the Chromebook experience on other hardware, and this was released first in late 2015. I installed it at the time, and then it was wonky and was hard to install, and Flash, you couldn't install Flash with it. It was very clumsy. Their latest releases in the last 4 weeks are amazing, and you can take dated hardware and turn it into a fast, efficient Chromebook that is, it's manageable like a Chromebook. You can buy a license for your local Chrome management console, and they've been advertising it as, and part of the reason why this is such an amazing product is because Chromebooks are low-end hardware. You can buy high-end Chromebooks, but they're expensive and may or may not be worth it. But if you go and buy the $200 Chromebook, that's actually a fairly slow processor with a relatively little amount of RAM. But if you have a circa 2009 laptop sitting around, a dual core with 2 gigs of RAM, which would be a dog on any modern iteration of an operating system, you can install the Chrome OS through the Neverwhere product, and it's as fast or faster than the typical out-of-the-box Chromebook because it's better hardware, it's faster chips, and I've now turned 4 computers into this as experiments. A junky old laptop at the office, something I had sitting around in a box here at home, and I prefer them to a modern Chromebook because they're faster.
Wow, we have about 20 netbooks circa 2009, just limping along on Windows 7. And we're gonna try this and see, especially with the management. I just got Google Cloud Print set up. I was kind of excited about this at school. We have these leased, Canon printer copiers, and so you set it up as a classic, and you have to run a print server. But anyway, with the management piece, we could have a Chrome box that could allow any user that comes in to be able to print to it. So we're going to try this at school. I've heard you talk about it, and I want to, we'll try it on a couple to see, but that's exciting to think about breathing new life into our old hardware. And that kind of takes us full circle back to the Apple discussion about iPhones and all this, because at some point it's like, do you really need more RAM? Do you really need a faster, hard drive? We're getting to the point where it's like, maybe not. Maybe this is gonna do the job well, or at least it's gonna be a cheaper refresh for us until there is a more compelling reason to step up to better hardware.
Yep.
All right. Well, we didn't have any questions from the gallery tonight, but thanks for joining us. Are you going to be okay for next week, as far as you know?
I am.
All right. Sounds good. Well, we'll put our brains together and possibly have a guest. But it's been good to be back. And how has spring come to Montana, or are you guys still in winter, or what are you doing?
It's Montana spring, so it was 60 degrees on Saturday and it snowed this morning. So we will be getting that weather shift back and forth probably for the next 4 to 5 weeks. So how about the Midwest?
We had a beautiful spring break. I was gone for part of it, but it got into the 70s and then a little bit of a cold front come in. It was blustery and nasty today, wind blowing, all kinds of stuff. So one of those days that when I was in West Texas at Texas Tech, we would always have faculty come visit this time of year, when the tumbleweeds are literally blowing down the street and people are like, you live here, so. But this too shall pass, and we'll have some better days. So.
Yep.
All right. Well, the rains have come to Brazil. They were having a sort of 3-year drought and just deluges of rain. And anyway, and I did not come back with the Zika virus as far as we know. I didn't see any mosquitoes. So yeah, that's a good thing.
Congratulations.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. And please tune in again next week and we will try to keep it interesting.
Thanks everyone. Good night.
All right. I think the recording actually worked.
That's awesome.
That's interesting. We only have one other person. It says 3 here now, 10 total. So the little thing I was seeing that said 10, I think was a cumulative number. So whatever. But,
you'll figure it out.
Hey, yeah, no, it's fun and good. So hopefully I'll figure out how I can, use my laptop again and click the link. I don't know what was up with that. I thought maybe it was an extension or, one of the blockers or something, but I don't know. All right, well. Have a good evening. And
thanks, you too. Great to talk to you. I'm glad you're back safe.
Yeah, it's good to be back. So then they'll probably have us back. I think my wife and I may get to go back in September or October. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, that'll be just after the Olympics are over with. So
that's right. Yeah. Well, they were having massive protests. I didn't, say this in the podcast, but their former president had been indicted and then arrested on corruption charges, and his handpicked. Because everyone votes in Brazil, and you have to use your national ID card for everything. In order to get Wi-Fi at Starbucks, I would have had to put my passport number in, I guess. I don't know why I couldn't make one up, or the national ID card. But anyway, everybody has to vote. So there's a lot of, all the poor vote, and they end up being promised a lot of things. While I was there, the new president appointed the indicted and arrested president the Secretary of Foreign Relations, because that position is immune from being arrested, I guess. And so he got out of that because now, hey, I'm the Secretary of Secretary of State. But there were like hundreds of thousands of people protesting the day we flew in, and then even when I went, the traffic was delayed and whatever. So. Oh
wow.
Yeah, kind of wild. So anyway, but hey, we're about to maybe elect Donald Trump, so I don't know that we're.
We're by the way, I think we're still recording, so you may want to edit that out later.
Oh, are we?
It says recording on my end.
Huh. Okay.